That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, I honestly think this is probably going to be the most useful rookie video you watch this offseason, because here, instead of going through and getting a mock draft underway, instead of playing pretend out here and trying to figure out actual rookie value, we are looking at real money, real dynasty startup drafts that have these rookies included. And what is special about this is teams have their rosters built out when they're on the clock deciding, okay, who's more valuable, MacRall or Jameson Williams? Who am I taking here? So we actually get a much better sense of how your actual rookie draft's going to go when teams have team needs, when they have to fill out that overall roster and make it a little bit more balanced. So this is going to be a very exciting video. We'll go player by player, try to get through the first 2 rounds. But before we do that, go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football, leave a comment letting me know why I am so stupid. And if you really want to support this channel, the best way you can do that is go out there and get our Dynasty Research Book. And the easiest way to get our Dynasty Research Book is going and making a deposit on Underdog Fantasy. Y'all have seen me draft a million teams on Underdog Fantasy, by far and away my favorite place to draft. We are going to get a ton of live streams going all the way up until the beginning of the season. We're probably going to draft over 200 teams this offseason with y'all on a live stream. So if you want to participate in those drafts with me, if you want to go check out some player props, if you want our Dynasty Research Book, a free month of our premium locals content, and your first deposit match dollar for dollar up to $100, please go to the link in the description, go to Underdog Fantasy, deposit with promo code FLOCK. And if you have already signed up for Underdog Fantasy, don't worry, you can still get our Dynasty Research Book down there in the description of the video as well. There'll be a link to our website. But that should be it. Let's dive it in and go with the 101, Breece Hall. Not much to discuss here. I mean, with Breece Hall, obviously this is a running back that you should be expecting to be the consensus 101. And real quick, I want to give another quick shout out. Y'all know I've been working on our Dynasty rookie draft guide. It's going to be another 100+ pages of draft guides. All I do is Dynasty research 24/7. And with our running back prospect evaluation process, we actually went out there and graded Breece Hall based on 5 different criteria. We've graded every running back that has been drafted in a Dynasty Fantasy Football League as a rookie since 2014. We're looking at a player pool of over 100 guys here. We've graded them all based on 40 time, their college target share, their draft capital, their BMI, whether they declared as a true junior or a senior, to create an overall composite prospect score. Very excited about this. And our early findings with Breece Hall is if he goes in the first round of this year's NFL draft, the only running backs that have ever scored as high as Breece Hall in our prospect model since 2014, keep in mind, since 2014, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, Jonathan Taylor, Leonard Fournette, and Todd Gurley. Those are our 6 highest scoring running back prospects coming out of college. Breece Hall is right there with him if he gets first round NFL draft capital, which I think is definitely a possibility based on his performance at the combine, based on his workload at Iowa State, and based on the rest of this running back class outside of Kenneth Walker. Really nothing exciting. So if we're looking at Breece Hall's actual price point, let's not talk about him at the 101. Let's talk about him compared to where some of these other running backs are going in Dynasty. I mean, here in the Flock 7, you actually have Breece Hall going back-to-back with Najee Harris, and you have Breece Hall before Javonte Williams, before DeAndre Swift, before Austin Eckler. I know a lot of people are going to think that is ridiculous to do before we get the Breece Hall landing spot. I'll say Breece Hall at the 201. It's a little bit rich for me, but still, in the second round, that's where he belongs. In the Flock 6, he goes directly behind Swift, Javonte Williams, directly in front of Christian McCaffrey, Cam Akers. Personally, that's where I have him ranked. If you have Melvin Gordon re-signing with Denver, then I would prefer Breece Hall over Javonte Williams. But with the assumption Melvin Gordon's no longer a Denver Bronco, I think you probably have to go Javonte one spot over him, but they are in the same tier. And then our last startup that we are going to be looking at, I got so close to having Breece Hall land to us at the 211. Instead, we pivot over. We go with Cooper Kupp and then Deshaun Watson at the 302 before he is traded. Thank God. But Breece Hall goes behind Christian McCaffrey, behind DeAndre Swift in this draft, and directly in front of Antonio Gibson and Austin Eckler. Breece Hall, please get with the times. If you are in a dynasty league where people really don't know what they're doing, take advantage of that. Go out there, overpay for the 101. Breece Hall is truly an elite level running back prospect. If you look at our prospect model, guys with this profile simply do not bust. It does not happen. Fire up Breece Hall, top 5 dynasty running back. We said that the day after the combine, people made fun of us. People are starting to wake up, and it's exciting. And let's go over to our next player here. This is going to be with the 102. He has been rising, Malik Willis. Now, Malik Willis, this is a quarterback I did not even have ranked as our quarterback 1 coming into the offseason, because I'm not sitting here pretending that I'm some expert quarterback guru scout, as nobody is on YouTube. Instead, we're looking for rushing upside, draft capital, landing spot at the quarterback position. And we have been extremely successful looking at those boxes. We've been able to identify Josh Allen, Justin Herbert as underrated quarterbacks in Dynasty based on how the overall community thinks that they can watch film on these quarterbacks and evaluate them. Don't fool yourself. You cannot do that. And with Malik Willis here, very interesting to see that now there is some discussion centering around the possibility of him being a top 2 pick in the NFL draft to the Detroit Lions. Obviously, a very bad landing spot, but if he gets that capital, we can assume that Malik Willis has a guaranteed starting job for the next 3 to 4 seasons. And very similar to Trey Lance. Y'all know I was drafting Trey Lance everywhere last year because based on his capital, he is a guaranteed start in the NFL for at least 3 to 4 years, even if he's as bad as Blake Bortles, Mitchell Trubisky were. And when you have that elite rushing ceiling that you see from Malik Willis, who averaged over 100 rushing yards as a true junior, I mean, that's what fantasy football dreams are made of. So here at the 2nd pick overall, I mean, I am moving Malik Willis there in our overall dynasty rankings. I believe we made that update about 2 weeks ago. We put him ahead of the elite wide receiver prospects. And here, that's where his ADP is going in these drafts as well, which is interesting because in a lot of regular dynasty rookie mock drafts we have done, you have the elite wide receivers going before Malik Willis. But now that you have an actual team attached to it, people are starting to realize, hell, in a super flex league, these quarterbacks are a little bit more valuable than the wide receivers. Love me some Malik Willis. If we're talking about the quarterbacks that he is going around in the flock 7, a little rich here. He goes at the 307. He goes directly behind Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields. He goes, a couple rounds ahead of Aaron Rodgers, Tua Tagovailoa, and Mac Jones. It's where I have him ranked. The 307 overall seems a little rich. However, if we're going to our next draft, the flock 6, you have Malik Willis at the 402, directly behind Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, directly ahead of Aaron Rodgers, Mac Jones, Tua Tagovailoa. And then if you're looking at the flock 10, Malik Willis at the 310, directly behind Fields, Stafford, Wilson, Watson, and then directly ahead of Rodgers, Jones, and Tua. So I think we have a decent idea of where Malik Willis is valued, and based on his rushing upside from a fantasy football standpoint, I can get behind it. Now our next player, formerly our 101 in this rookie class, and thank God we have the NFL Combine telling us that Breece Hall is that elite prospect, because it would have been hilarious if we were drafting Treylon Burks still at the 101. It would have been laughably bad. We currently have him ranked as our 3rd rookie overall, and that's where his ADP is sliding in as well. Now with Treylon Burks, is a wide receiver that is going to be going behind someone like Garrett Wilson. He's most likely going to go behind Drake London as well in the NFL draft, but I am a lot more willing to lean on our analytical approach to the wide receiver position with the volume and the dominance they displayed in college, based on the fact that NFL teams with their draft capital are almost investing into something completely differently than what we're looking for in Dynasty. I mean, we kind of discussed this last offseason, saying you needed to discount the overall draft capital that you had from those speedy vertical field stretching elements like Dwayne Eskridge and Tutu Atwell, and not read into the draft capital too much with Amon-Ra St. Brown, who went in the 4th round compared to those other receivers going in the 2nd, because with St. Brown, he's not going to provide a ton of value for the Detroit Lions, given the fact that he's operating closer to the line of scrimmage. He's not able to stretch the opposing defense, and a lot of wide receivers like Jamison Crowder gets paid $2 million to go over to the Buffalo Bills. I mean, that role just isn't really valued in the NFL, but it can be highly valuable in fantasy football in particular, Whereas on the opposite end of the spectrum, those speedy wide receivers like Chris Olave that can stretch the field in the NFL, they're going to be valued higher in the NFL draft than they'll actually be in Dynasty Fantasy Football. So I am completely fine having Treylon Burks as our wide receiver 1 in Dynasty based on the dominance he displayed at Arkansas, despite the NFL not valuing him there as dynasty managers are. I think at the receiver position, that's completely fine. If we're going through and checking out where he went in these dynasty startup drafts, goes to the 405 directly in front of Deontay Johnson, DJ Moore, Stephon Diggs. I think that's a little bit too rich right now for Treylon Burks. Of course, he goes to Kansas City. All is well there. And then if we're looking at our next startup, this is going to be the Flock 6. He goes to the 401. The same exact range. He goes the pick after DK Metcalf. He goes right before Deontay Johnson, DJ Moore, and Stephon Diggs. And if we're looking at the Flock 7, you have Treylon Burks. I believe he falls here a little bit. Yeah, he goes at the 5'11", right after Elijah Moore, DJ Moore, as well as T. Higgins. And he goes directly ahead of Amari Cooper. This is post Deshaun Watson trade. Devonta Smith, Garrett Wilson, and Terry McLaurin. But let's go over to our next player, someone that I actually think is being overvalued in these startup drafts. But this is the perfect example of looking at how your overall league is going to be different than a mock draft when teams have team needs, when they have positions to fill. And Kenneth Walker is just that. He's a running back. We know running backs are much harder to come by. I mean, he is going to be the 4th player in this set of ADP. And here, this is what we talked about in the video yesterday, where I was coming out here and saying, historically speaking, based on the research we have done and presented, I think very nicely in that Dynasty research book, you have seen teams in the middle of the first round, this exact range with Kenneth Walker, push these running backs up boards that, I mean, have overall red flags. With Kenneth Walker, this is a running back that is not going to be playing on 3rd downs. He's a 1st and 2nd down option. I'm completely fine saying he can be a running back 2 in fantasy, but for him to have this kind of capital going ahead of elite wide receiver prospects such as Garrett Wilson, such as Drake London, I personally think that's going to be a mistake. Instead of having Kenneth Walker, I mean, at the 104 in our overall rankings, I believe I have Kenneth Walker, I want to say at the 107. We have him definitely behind those elite level wide receivers. Now, with Walker, if you're looking at where he's going in these startups, I mean, he's going behind David Montgomery. I completely agree. You should be taking David Montgomery over him. He's going directly ahead of Ezekiel Elliott, Alvin Kamara, Isaiah Spiller, and Josh Jacobs. Like, let's look at Josh Jacobs versus Kenneth Walker. I think this is intriguing. Josh Jacobs, we have seen Jacobs, I mean, go out there and be the #1 running back in the NFL with carries inside the 10-yard line. We saw Josh Jacobs this past season have a career high in his targets per game, and he has been gradually rising with those targets per game every single year that he's been in the NFL. With Josh Jacobs as well, he's only 23 years old. So Jacobs, he's a 1st and 2nd down running back, 23 years old, proven success at the NFL level. I don't necessarily think that Kenneth Walker should be going consistently ahead of Josh Jacobs in these dynasty drafts. I'm fine if you want to have Kenneth Walker with the slight edge, but I mean, it seems like Kenneth Walker maybe is just a watered down version of Josh Jacobs. And now our next player is going to be at the receiver position with a Garrett Wilson as the 5th rookie off the board. Garrett Wilson, most likely going to be the 1st rookie off the board at the receiver position in the NFL draft. Now, the issue is never the wide receiver 1 on his own offense. Now, that's not too bad considering at one point at Ohio State, you had 4 wide receivers that were going to be 1st-round selections in the NFL draft with Jameson Williams, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith, going to be the wide receiver 1 overall in the draft next year. Looks like literally a Jamar Chase level prospect, maybe better as a prospect, not as a player. There's a difference. But here, if we're looking at Garrett Wilson, I think that you could see him go to a bad landing spot, making him drop a little bit further in these rankings, such as Washington is a spot I've seen a ton of people mocking Garrett Wilson too, which of course would not be great. If we're talking about his actual dynasty value here, I'm completely fine taking him at the 503, however, because he is a wide receiver that displayed the ability to get on the field, dominate his targets over someone like Jameson Williams as a 2nd-year player at Ohio State, and as a year 3 player, he was able to go out there and usurp Chris Olave on the depth chart. Chris Olave, a wide receiver that I really like. So if I like Chris Olave, I better really like Garrett Wilson. Now, our next player, Isaiah Spiller with the 6th pick overall. Now, this is going right back to what we've been previously discussing. Pushing up these running backs that do not deserve it, where you have elite level wide receiver prospects on the board. And this is something you're probably not going to see in regular Dynasty rookie mock drafts. But once you get real teams and real positional value attached to these guys, this is a trend that we have seen with Kenneth Walker getting pushed up too far. This is a trend we've seen with Isaiah Spiller now getting pushed up too far. Now, Isaiah Spiller, this is a running back that I was excited about at the very beginning of the offseason, because if you were looking at the measurables, the teams listed in Texas A&M and Iowa State, they listed Breece Hall and Isaiah Spiller essentially as the same size, despite Breece Hall having a significantly higher BMI than Isaiah Spiller. So Breece Hall, we learned at the NFL Combine, is the much bigger running back. And with Isaiah Spiller, I mean, we don't even know the official 40-yard dash time that we have at the Pro Day. There's, I mean, a decent amount of conversation saying that Isaiah Spiller ran like a 4.62. I know a lot of people are trying to point out a small group of running backs in the NFL that have found success with the lack of speed that Isaiah Spiller demonstrated at his pro day. But those running backs are big-bodied running backs. Like, let me go through and let's grade out Isaiah Spiller real quick on this video. I have not done this in our draft guide yet. We've been mainly doing research. We haven't even applied this to the current class of rookies. Okay, so we just got our grade for Isaiah Spiller. And looking at the running backs that have graded out similarly in the past, I mean, the same exact grade you have for Amir Abdullah. I mean, you have running backs like Trey Mason looking similar, Jay Ajayi. Of course, these aren't the exact build of running backs because they have different red flags and they have different strengths on their profiles. I mean, here, another Marlon Mack as an example. I mean, you have Kenyon Drake as an example. There's just no reason to be taking a running back that has these red flags, that is nothing close to an elite level prospect based on very predictive measures going over to the NFL level over someone like Drake London that we're getting to next. I mean, with Drake London here, this is a wide receiver that is that elite level option. I mean, you look at the dominance early as a true freshman getting on the field, taking targets away from Michael Pittman and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Michael Pittman was a senior. He was a senior, and you have Drake London started the year at 17, turned 18 his freshman season, but getting on the field and taking targets away from him. You had Amon-Ra St. Brown as the probably highest graded wide receiver at the last month of the season outside of Jamar Chase as a rookie this past year. And you have Drake London taking targets away from both of them at a significantly younger age. Then you have Drake London showing the dominance his junior season at USC, where he goes out there and commands over 40% of the team's receiving production. This is crazy. I know some people have tried comparing him to J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, which is legitimately laughable. The only thing similar with those receivers is they're big and they played in the same conference. That's the only thing that you're going to be looking at. With Drake London, I think that this is an example of a player that you are getting a massive discount on based on the saturation of the wide receiver position and how not many people need receivers. Okay, let's speed this up. Our next two options going to be Kenny Pickett, MacRall at pick 8 and pick 9. I think both these quarterbacks as well, someone I'm taking over Isaiah Spiller, because we can look at both of these options and say, well, we know if quarterbacks hit their rookie seasons, especially if they demonstrate some rushing upside. Now, of course, I mean, you don't need to be Lamar Jackson. Not everybody needs to be Malik Willis, but as long as you can be Justin Herbert, as long as you can get 300, 400 rushing yards in a single season, sign me up. That's massive in raising your floor and your ceiling combination. And with Kenny Pickett, MacRall, they should both be first-round selections. As it stands, it looks like Kenny Pickett is going to be going before Matt Corral, and a lot of this is going to depend on landing spot for these guys. Y'all know, I mean, the example I always have to bring up is I was all in on Trey Lance last offseason and all out on Justin Fields. I mean, big reason for that is the 49ers with Kyle Shanahan versus the Bears with Matt Nagy. We are still going to have to look at these quarterback landing spots and dictate a lot of their value based on that this upcoming season. So, of course, if you're drafting these quarterbacks where they are going to be a little bit landing spot dependent, it's going to be tougher to do so before the NFL draft. But nonetheless, I think they are values here. Pick 8 and 9. Now, our next receiver, Jameson Williams, pick 10. Y'all know I am not a fan of taking Williams here. I understand the upside. This is a wide receiver that was very productive at Alabama his junior season, the year after transferring. Clearly, Alabama, one of the, if not the best team in the country. So if we're looking at Jameson Williams, I mean, you would say, oh, 1 + 1 = 2, the best wide receiver on the best team in the country. Does that not mean Jameson Williams right at the very top? I mean, that's what the national media coverage has told me time and time again. Not necessarily. I mean, I'm going to continue to stand by this all offseason. Chris Olave dominated targets, dominated playing time over Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams coming off a significant injury that occurred at the very end of the season. It would be completely different if Williams, tore his ACL week 3 of the college football season. But that happened in the national championship. He is not going to be able to participate at rookie minicamp. He is not going to be able to participate at training camp. He's not going to be able to participate, most likely, during the preseason. He's going to be a very raw rookie. I would prefer to get someone that has a similar profile. Honestly, I would probably make the argument he has a slightly better profile given his breakout age and given the target competition that he had at Ohio State. And he's completely healthy. Give me Chris Olave over Jameson Williams. I understand, though, we have Chris Olave then as the 11th player off the board. And with Chris Olave, I think that he is going to end up being a value. If we're pulling up where he has gone in these drafts, Chris Olave, we took him right before you had Christian Watson, Michael Gallup, Jahan Dotson, Allen Robinson, Rashad Bateman going off the board. And then in another draft, you have him going right before George Pickens, Juju Smith-Schuster. And in our final draft that we can pull up here with Chris Olave, he goes, okay, this is a little bit rich. He goes right before Keenan Allen, Brandon Ayuk, Darnell Mooney, Mike Evans, Michael Thomas. I'm pretty sure we have a couple of those wide receivers ranked ahead of him. But nonetheless, in a decent amount of leagues here, Chris Olave is going as a wide receiver in fantasy. He is going to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft. He showed his dominance with tough competition on that roster. You had Garrett Wilson. You had Jackson Smith. You had Jameson Williams all on that team in 2020. And Chris Olave led it. Now, of course, I'm ranking Garrett Wilson over Chris Olave. I just think you're getting great value here. And let's kind of round it out just with our 12th rookie here. I probably went a little bit too deep on each and every one of these guys, but nonetheless, we can dive a little bit deeper in future videos, and maybe I'll post this over there on Locals for everybody a part of the Flock community. And if you're not a part of the Flock community on Locals, the easiest way to do that, go deposit $10 on Underdog Fantasy, use promo code FLOCK, get our Dynasty research book, get your first deposit match dollar for dollar up to $100, get into drafts with us, and get into our Locals community for free. And now our last guy, we're going to be looking at George Pickens, the 12th rookie off the board. Now with Pickens, y'all know this is an option that I have laughed when people are taking him over Chris Olave. I have laughed when they're taking him over. Some people have said take him over Drake London, take him over Treylon Burks, take him over Garrett Wilson. There's no reason to do that. I will be the first person to admit George Pickens has a ton of upside. And the thing that looks great for George Pickens right now is from an NFL draft standpoint, he's going behind, and I can guarantee you, he's going behind Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Jameson Williams, Chris Olave. He's going behind those 5 wide receivers. He's then probably going to be the best wide receiver available on the board at the end of the first round. The end of the first round, you have the Green Bay Packers with 2 draft picks. You have the Kansas City Chiefs with 2 draft picks. So there is a non-0% chance, or probably a pretty high chance, that George Pickens gets one of, if not the best landing spots in the NFL draft this season. So, of course, if you're projecting that out, you would probably prefer Pickens over Olave, over Williams. It's just so hard to say that at this point before we actually see the landing spots. And, of course, thank you so much for being a part of the flock and supporting the channel. Really hope you enjoyed this video. Go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. Go through the link in the description. Go get our Dynasty research book. Go get that, whether you deposit on Underdog, whether you go to our website. Regardless, thank you again. Hope you have a great day. Hope we get to see you with the video tomorrow.